G'day and welcome back to yet another episode of Tomo's Tune-Ups. On this episode, we are working on Apprentice Kev's Morris Mini 850. Well folks, welcome back to the channel. Thank you very much for tuning in and I hope you're enjoying the beard. I'm going to grow this out for the Ralston Classic 2025. So on this episode, we are working on Apprentice Kev's Morris Mini 850 and we're going to be diagnosing clutch. So let's jump into it. So pretty standard 850 dash inside a Classic Mini. What's actually happening is we put our foot on the clutch and then we go to engage a gear. Nothing actually happens. Now, being an early 850, they are a crunch box, meaning that it is not a lunch box, but a crunch box. That means essentially that first gear does not have a synchro. Therefore, whenever you go to engage, it'll always grind, or at least 90% of the time, unless you rev match the gears or you just happen to get lucky. Second, third, and fourth do have a synchro gear, which means it is a smoother engagement and slows down the teeth to allow better and smoother engagement. So the issue is that we go to put our foot on the clutch while the engine's running, we go to put it into first, it will not engage, second, third, fourth, or even reverse, and it just grinds. So let's look under the bonnet and see where we need to start. All right, so first things first, when we're diagnosing clutch, we want to start with the fluid condition. As you can see, the brake fluid here is looking pretty grotty, and this clutch fluid here is looking a little bit cleaner. We can test that with a hydrometer soon and see if it needs replacing. So I know that is not the issue. I'm going to show you how I diagnose this. First we're going to be doing is looking at any rubber lines. As you can see here, this is the only rubber line that runs from the steel pipe down to the rubber hose, which then attaches to the slave cylinder. Being rubber, it will deteriorate over time. If there's any leaks, it will show signs of moisture. It's very unlikely in Australia here that any of these steel pipes will rust. There is a little bit of surface rust here, but in order for that to rust all the way through, it's very unlikely in Australia, but likely in other countries such as England, where they have salt on the roads. So you want to be checking any of the rubber lines. As you can see, there are no leaks down there whatsoever. So we're going to be moving along to the slave cylinder. You want to be pulling the boot back on the slave cylinder. There is a little bit of moisture there. If you pull that boot back and there is moisture in there, she is cactus, she is leaking and she needs to be replaced. Let's try and get that back here. So it looks pretty good. So there's no issues with that slave cylinder. If there's any leaks here, it's going to be losing pressure, therefore not engaging the clutch properly. As you can see, this retaining clip here, the pin and the spring are fitted. It does have plenty of tension on there, and it's got the little circlip at the back there, the little washer that sits on there to hold the back of the spring. So what we need to now do is check the distance from this end stop bolt just here to the arm. If this is not extended far enough, essentially what you're doing is you're putting your foot on the clutch, it is pushing the piston out, and you're only taking up the slack in the piston and not actually engaging the fork down the bottom here. Keep in mind though that this pin here, where my finger is, and this pin here, they do wear over time and they can cause slight movement. So 1 or 2 mil of movement here will result in probably 5, maybe 6 mil of movement down the bottom. Next thing I want to be doing is checking to see if, I'll just try and get the camera in the right position. See how much movement we have in this arm and what the end stop gap is. A really good tech tip is to use a feeler gauge and wedge it between this piece just here and the bolt. If it is bigger than a standard sized cable tie, it's got too much movement. If it's too tight, it's going to be riding. So let's have a look at this. Yeah, so first of all, that is way too much. You can probably see there's a good probably 3 mil I reckon in there, so that is way too much to begin with. So that's not actually a problem, but let's have a look and see what it's doing when I put my foot on the clutch. What I'm going to do is put my foot on the clutch. I want you to watch this clutch arm completely, as well as a plunger down below. On, off, on, off, on, and off. So, did you see what's happening there? Let's just break it down. This is the clutch arm. This is the slave cylinder, our end stop, our pivot point, and down below we have the plunger that sits inside here where the arm attaches to. This is the effort being applied, which is pushing out this way. The fulcrum, which is the pivot point, is this bolt, which is pivoting on, and the load is down below. As that arm moves, it pushes in and then engages the plunger, which then engages the clutch, enables you to change gears, you remove it, and then it returns back. So we know the top section up here is fine because there is no leaks and it is moving. The gap between here and here with that fully extended is way too big, but it's not actually the problem. You can actually see what the problem is here. If you look closely, just down here, I'll move this arm, and what's happening? Nothing at all. So this plunger is not moving inwards. Let's jump into the shed and I'll show you an exploded view of what's happening. For those of you who don't know, the Mozzie is almost done. We'll discuss that in a later episode. Once again, proudly sponsored by Minisport. So we have the yellow Bible just here and a bunch of engine parts. So here is one I prepared earlier. Here is the plunger, which is this here, which is what the arm goes into, and that is the release bearing sitting on the end. The arm is situated in here. As it moves, it will then push across. It pivots down here where my pinky is, and then pushes on the diaphragm. Once you take foot of clutch, spring tension, then pushes it back and releases. So the arm is doing this with it pivoting just here. The plunger is moving in and out ever so slightly. What's happening is where this ball is situated down the bottom just here, where it connects inside the plunger, it has too much movement. So for example, let's bring this up here. Essentially, it's doing this. When the arm's moving, there's too much movement and it's not engaging the clutch, which means we have one of two problems. One is that the arm is bent, or two, the plunger is worn. As this is a ball and socket, it's very likely that they're worn together and therefore they both need to be replaced. So because it's a ball and socket joint, you want to look at the ball just here. Where it pivots, it'll generally wear just on the tip. And looking at it like this, sometimes they bend upwards as they wear, and even inside here as well. If the engagement inside here is not a nice snug fit, you're going to have excessive movement. And even though it might be 1 or 2 mil of movement down here, by the time it gets to the top, it might be 5 to 10 mil movement, which then means you have excessive amount of throw and not enough engagement. Some people bend the arm like this. I'm not sure if this one was bent originally, if it has been bent, or if it came from factory like this, but some people will bend the top part of the arm to compensate for the engagement of the clutch. So this one, for instance, might be bent on a slight angle this way, but that is only band-aid fixing the problem and not actually rectifying it. So we need to ensure all these components are completely straight, the ball isn't worn, and the plunger is completely round and not ovaled. Let's pull it out and have a look. All right, so we got the wok cover off and we got Apprentice Kev come around to help out. So let's go have a look and see what we found. So, got the wok just over here. Got the fork as well. As you can see, it's pretty average. Let's give that a bit of a clean. So you can actually see where it's been wearing, where it's all shiny right at the very end. And this piece is supposed to be over this way a little bit further. So what we'll do now is we'll take off these two nuts and then we'll have a look inside there and see what it's like. All right, so just quickly a couple of things to note. That's the original pin that goes through the bottom of here. When it goes in, you want to check it, see if it's got movement, see how much movement that's got. You can actually see a bit of a gap between where the pin goes through and the arm, and you can even see that it's ovaled as well. That was a spare clutch arm that I had. This one would probably get you out of trouble. Not as much movement, does have some in it, but definitely excessive amount of movement. And the original one out of grace, that goes in, and that's actually quite firm. So it'll be a combination of this pin is worn, as well as this component. If we spin this around, if we put the original arm in, slide the pin back through, you can see how much movement there is prior to engagement. Take that out, put Grace's old arm in, slide it through once you line it up. So yeah, a little bit of movement, but also, as I said before, it's a combination of the plunger being worn as well as the arm. So we've taken up some of that slack, but it's still got movement. So let's pull the plunger out and have a look. So we'll give that a clean a bit later on. As we were just saying, the original engine colour was green, which must have been an olive green, I think. Alright, so this one goes in here, almost all the way in as well. It's got movement, so it's got heaps there. Let's grab Grace's old one, slide that in there. Got a little bit of movement, but she's a lot tighter. Put the old arm back in there. Yeah. It's like throwing sausage down the hallway. Alright, so we decided we could use Grace's original plunger and arm, but the release bearing on that is actually noisy. It'd probably be okay to use and get you out of trouble, but because we're going to this extent, we're just going to order some new parts. So next scene will be with the new parts and we'll refit this. G'day folks, Tomo here from Tomo's Tune-Ups. If you haven't already, please consider hitting that like and subscribe button to my channel. Not only will you be kept informed as to when I release new videos, but also it helps to grow my channel, my analytics, and most importantly, recommend videos to yourself and new subscribers. Alright folks, so it's been a couple of days. We got Apprentice Kev back here. He went and cleaned up the wok. Essentially, we've changed a few things on it. We've put a new plunger on there. We've put a new heavy-duty release bearing on there. We've also gone ahead and ordered 2 new engine mounts. The old one was pretty shot on the driver's side. The passenger side. We're also going to change the driver's side as well. It's got a new clutch arm, new pins top and bottom, and a couple of new bolts as well, just to freshen it up, just to give it a little bit better look. We do need to also do a clutch slave cylinder because it is leaking. We've got a new spring as well, so a new return spring. To change the slave cylinder is pretty easy. If you're just doing it, it's 2 9/16 bolts and a hose. Better off loosening the hose first and then removing the bolts and removing the slave cylinder. In our case, we're going to be replacing the pipe from the steel pipe down to the clutch slave cylinder, which is rubber hose. So loosen off all the fittings first and then remove the slave cylinder, because if you don't, you'll find it super difficult to be able to do it. Kev's going to jump behind the camera and we're going to film him doing it, because I'm going to jump back on the Black Mosquito. So let's get into it and we'll touch base in a sec. Now, Tomo's tech tip here is when you are fitting the wok cover, do not fit the engine mount bolts until everything is in and then tighten those up last. Failure to do so will result in the difficulty fitting the cover correctly. As you can see here, Kev is using new bolts and washers to go in the wok cover. These can just be a regular UNC bolt, but Minisport also sell a set of bolts specifically designed for this and the transfer case housing. When you are fitting this, make sure that you leave out the bottom 3 bolts. There are 2 at the bottom and 1 at the back on the firewall side. You can fit this when the engine is out of the vehicle, but if you try and attempt to fit them when it's in there, you are going to have the world's hardest time fitting them to the vehicle. Don't get me wrong, it's not going to be the end of the world if you leave a couple of bolts out, but you will find that if you go to put them in and you have to take them out on the side of the road, you will spend the next 3.5 months sitting there turning them 1/16 of a turn at a time to try and get them out. Ask me how I know, I've done it before. Live and learn. Leave a couple of bolts out. It is not going to be the end of the world. It's not like the vehicle is going to fall to pieces having those out. It's just going to mean that if you ever have to take it out again, you are going to have a much easier time than what Kev was having removing it from the vehicle. Now, like we've spoken about previously, it is worthwhile having an array of tools. As you can see, Kev is using everything from standard spanners and ratchets all the way through to ratchet spanners and even an electric ratchet. It is worthwhile noting that when you are fitting these, that you do them up by hand and then retension them afterwards. Failure to do so will mean, because the housing is aluminium, it will strip the bolts quite easily, and then you're going to have to pull it all apart again, re-tap it and start again. Now, anyone that owns an A-Series engine and has done engine mounts to it before knows how difficult fitting these engine mount bolts can be. It can be a case of putting a screwdriver through the opposite hole, giving it a jimmy, and then lining it up, putting the bolt through, and away you go. We did speak about on a previous episode of Minisport where you can buy the special tool used to put the engine mount bolts in from the inside and then put the nut on the outside. Essentially, it's just a fork with a bolt that sits in between 2 of the blades. This is a really handy tool, and you can do it without it, but it does make it quite difficult, especially trying to hold it in place. If you're struggling with this, you can do it a couple of different ways. Sometimes the easiest way might be just to elongate the hole slowly on the subframe, just to give it a little bit better access, but then you run the risk of it shifting, moving, and then creating a vibration down the track. A screwdriver is a really easy way to get it lined up. Once it's lined up, grab the bolt, slide it in. If you've got the tool, use it. If not, you can do it without it. It just means you're going to be there for a little bit longer. Now, unlike me, Kev doesn't go to the gym, nor does he eat his Weet-Bix, so he was pretty weak on this and needed me to come over and help him remove the steel bundy line that went from the clutch master cylinder down to the firewall. Now, the nut that holds the rubber hose that goes from the clutch slave cylinder up to the firewall was actually rusted, so we needed to use quite a lot of penetrant such as WD-40 to be able to loosen it off. Before removing the slave cylinder, make sure you loosen off the rubber hose that goes to it. If you try and remove the pipe afterwards, once you've removed the slave cylinder from the transfer case, it will be quite hard to release the pipe. Make sure that everything is loose prior to removal, and then remove it one at a time. Looking back at this video, I realized how much of an absolute pain it was to be able to remove that pipe, simply because it was not only rusted, but also the pipe below it would not grip no matter what we used. We ended up using a set of multi grips to be able to hold it, and then eventually vice grips as well. That enabled us to remove it correctly. Once we'd got it off, we then removed the slave cylinder, threw the whole assembly in the bin, and then reassembled it. Now, another one of Tomo's tech tips here is that wherever possible, use new bolts. Not only does it make it look good, but it also means that putting a new bolt in an old hole is a much better option than cross-threading the original bolt and having issues with it because it is 55 years old. Not only that, but when you are fitting brake pipes, make sure you inspect them prior to fitment. If they show any signs of wear, tear, rust, holes, or they're not even seating properly, it's best to go down to your local brake supplier, get them to mold up a new one, or even contact the guys from Minisport and buy a new one. When you buy new ones from Minisport, you generally need to bend them into shape, which isn't overly hard, but is worthwhile doing if you are repairing any sort of brake system that shows any signs of fault on it that you're unsure about. Brake fluid is something you definitely don't want to be spilling, not because it's brake fluid and it's going to eat the paint, but also this is what stops you. If you have no brakes, you won't be able to stop. It is definitely worthwhile ensuring that all of the fittings are fine and that your brakes are bled correctly. If you're unsure how to do it, check out some of my videos on my YouTube channel, or alternatively, seek professional advice to do so. Alright folks, moment of truth. We are going for a drive in Kev's car. He can't actually open the door, so once we get in there, we can go for a drive and see what it's like. We got it started, we got the brake fluid bled for the clutch. We just did a coolant flush as well, because we had to do a thermostat, and thermostat housing gasket. I think that's pretty much it. Did some engine mounts, and we're all good. So, go for a little drive in his 850 and see what it's like. Gave the carby a little bit of a tune as well, just to try and give it a little bit more kick. So we found it was a little bit slow on the response. Yeah, good my side, especially on takeoff and even starting. Oh. Sounds like it's flooding. Alright, pull over and give another quick little tune. A quick little tune on the side of the road. Adjust the ignition timing. Yeah. Hang on. So I think we've just run out of fuel. Thing will not start. Was not accelerating whatsoever. And adjusted the timing a little bit. Took a little bit of fuel out of it because I thought it was flooding. Turns out he has no fuel in the vehicle. Good one, Kev. Alright, so gave it a little tweak and it seemed to have come good. It's now running again. Let's go for another squirt and see what it does. There we go. If my timing light worked, we could tell what the timing is, but we currently can't. It definitely feels like it's getting way too much fuel now. The timing's definitely off.
Probably not a good time to bring it home yet, or
probably not yet. Yeah. I think let's wrap this episode up. Let's give this thing a tune and we can touch base again next episode when we give it a tune and see how it goes. If not, I'll upload a video at the end of this one. I'll let you know how it's going. Thanks for watching. Catch you on the next one.